Why most people fail in business. 3 businesses started on the same street, with the same $5,000, in the same market. 6 months later, 2 were bankrupt, and 1 was opening a second location. The strange part? None of them started at a disadvantage. Same opportunity. Same customers. Same economy. So what changed? Most people think business failure comes from bad ideas, bad luck, or lack of money. But in reality, businesses usually collapse because of 3 invisible forces most owners never notice until it's too late. To understand this, we have to look at business A, business B, and business C. Because even though they started in the same place, they played the game completely differently. Before we reveal what separated them. If you want to understand exactly why businesses fail and how to avoid it, hit subscribe. You'll want to see what comes next. Now, let's talk about Business A. Business A started with excitement. The owner had energy, confidence, and huge ambitions. You've probably felt this stage before. Motivation is high, ideas are flowing, everything feels possible. But there was one hidden problem quietly destroying the business from the inside. Every time progress slowed down, the owner changed direction. 1 month it was branding. The next month, a new strategy. Then a new trend appeared, and suddenly the entire business shifted again. At first, this looked smart. Flexible. Adaptive. Open-minded. But there's a dangerous difference between adapting and constantly escaping discomfort. Business A never stayed in one direction long enough to build momentum. And slowly, something started happening. The business kept restarting without realizing it. New plans. New ideas. New excitement. But no depth. And eventually, the market stopped paying attention. Business B looked far more professional. The owner believed in preparation, structure, and careful planning. Unlike Business A, they didn't rush decisions. They spent months refining the logo, adjusting pricing, improving strategy, and redesigning the website, convinced everything had to be perfect before launch. And honestly? From the outside, it looked responsible. But hidden inside perfectionism was a problem most entrepreneurs never detect early enough. Fear. Not obvious fear. Professional-looking fear. Because sometimes perfectionism is just procrastination wearing a suit. While Business B kept preparing, competitors were already learning from real customers. Making mistakes. Improving. Building trust. And by the time Business B finally entered the market, the momentum was gone. But here's what makes this even more interesting. Business C succeeded for a reason that had very little to do with speed. Then there was Business C. At first, nobody took Business C seriously. The branding was average. The systems were incomplete. Even the owner admitted they didn't fully know what they were doing yet. But Business C understood something the others missed. Movement creates clarity. So instead of waiting to feel fully ready, they started small. They launched. Learned. Adjusted. Then kept moving. Not recklessly. Not blindly. Consistently. And while Business A kept restarting, and Business B kept preparing, Business C quietly built momentum. Customer by customer. Mistake by mistake. Improvement by improvement. That consistency started compounding. Like interest in a bank account. Small actions repeated long enough became something powerful. Trust. Experience. Systems. Confidence. Reputation. And by the time the others realized what was happening, Business C was already too far ahead to catch. The real reason most businesses fail. Most people believe business success is about having the perfect idea. It's not. The real test begins after the excitement disappears. That's where most people fall into one of 3 traps. Some constantly change direction before momentum has time to build. Others stay trapped in preparation, waiting for perfect conditions that never arrive. And some refuse to adapt once the market gives feedback. But successful businesses understand something different. Business rewards progress more than perfection. Because execution teaches lessons that thinking alone never can. And the businesses that survive are usually not the smartest. They're the ones that keep learning without stopping. So here's the uncomfortable question: which business sounds most like you right now? Because the answer may explain exactly why your business is growing, or why it's stuck. Why businesses fail: lack of structure. One of the biggest hidden reasons businesses fail is not lack of money. And surprisingly, it's not even lack of ideas. It's lack of structure. Most people start businesses emotionally, not systematically. They rely on motivation instead of systems. And at first, that excitement feels powerful. The energy is high. The vision feels clear. Everything looks promising. But then something dangerous starts happening quietly in the background. The business becomes dependent on the owner's mood. And the moment motivation drops, everything starts slowing down. This is why many businesses don't collapse immediately. They slowly become inconsistent, confused, disorganized, unstable. But here's what makes this interesting: the businesses that survive are not always the smartest. They're usually the ones that learned how to build structure before chaos exposed their weaknesses. To understand this properly, let's look at Business A, Business B, and Business C. Because all three started with opportunity. But only one built something stable enough to survive. Business A, the random hustler. Business A started with a simple idea: selling clothes online. At first, the owner was highly motivated. They posted daily on social media, replied quickly to customers, talked constantly about growth. Everything looked active. But behind the scenes, there was a hidden problem nobody noticed early enough. Nothing was structured. No clear pricing system. No customer tracking. No supplier workflow. No consistent posting strategy. One week the business was extremely active. The next week, silence. At first, sales still came in because of excitement, friends, and temporary momentum. But eventually the inconsistency started catching up. Customers stopped trusting the process. Orders became unpredictable. Operations became stressful. And slowly, the business started depending entirely on motivation to survive. That's when the real problem appeared. Because motivation is temporary. And without structure, effort becomes random activity, not a real business. But here's where things become more interesting. Business B actually had some structure. Yet it still struggled badly. Why? Business B, the semi-organized entrepreneur. Business B ran a food delivery business. Unlike Business A, this owner looked more organized. There was a menu, basic pricing, WhatsApp ordering, and occasional income tracking. From the outside, the business looked functional. And for a while, it survived. But survival and scalability are not the same thing. Because hidden underneath the business were critical gaps. No financial recording system. No proper delivery workflow. No marketing strategy. No reinvestment plan. So even though sales sometimes increased, the business constantly felt stuck. Money came in, then disappeared. Problems repeated themselves. Stress kept increasing. And the owner couldn't understand why growth never became stable. The problem wasn't lack of effort. It was incomplete structure. Business B built enough systems to survive. But not enough systems to scale. And that's a dangerous place for many entrepreneurs. Because partial organization creates the illusion of control. But eventually the cracks start showing. Then came Business C. And this business operated completely differently. Business C, the structured business. Business C ran a small printing service. Nothing flashy. Nothing revolutionary. In fact, many people underestimated it at first. But Business C understood something most entrepreneurs learn too late: structure creates stability. The business had clear pricing, daily sales tracking, a defined customer workflow, consistent marketing, separate business and personal money, and a monthly reinvestment system. Everything had a process. So even when the owner felt tired, the business still moved. Customers still received service. Orders still flowed. Marketing still happened. And over time, something powerful started building: predictability. While other businesses depended on emotion, Business C depended on systems. And systems scale far better than motivation ever can. That consistency slowly turned into trust, operational stability, customer retention, and long-term growth. And by the time others realized what was happening, Business C had already built momentum too strong to stop easily. The core truth: most businesses fail because owners confuse activity with progress. They stay busy, but nothing is actually organized. They rely on memory instead of systems. They don't document processes. They don't build repeatable workflows. And eventually the business becomes exhausting to manage. Because a business without structure is not really a business. It's a hobby under pressure. Final takeaway. If you remember only one thing from this video, remember this: structure is what keeps a business alive when the owner is tired, distracted, or unmotivated. Without structure, income becomes unstable, customers become inconsistent, and growth becomes difficult to sustain. But with structure, a business can continue operating, improving, and scaling, even when the owner is not constantly pushing everything manually. Because successful businesses are not built only on hard work. They are built on systems that keep working even after motivation fades. The infographic explains one of the biggest hidden reasons businesses fail: lack of structure. Many entrepreneurs start businesses with excitement, motivation, and big ideas, but without organized systems. Instead of building processes, they rely on emotions, memory, and inconsistent effort. At first, this may seem productive, but over time it creates confusion, instability, and slow collapse. To demonstrate this, the infographic compares 3 different businesses. Business A operates randomly without clear systems. Posting, pricing, customer management, and operations are inconsistent. The business survives on temporary motivation, but once that motivation fades, the business begins collapsing. Business B appears more organized and has some structure in place. However, critical systems such as financial tracking, workflow management, marketing strategy, and reinvestment are incomplete. The business survives, but struggles to grow beyond a certain level. Business C takes a completely different approach. It builds structured systems for pricing, customer processes, sales tracking, marketing, and reinvestment. Because the business depends on systems instead of emotions, it continues operating consistently even when the owner feels tired or unmotivated. Over time, this creates stability, trust, and scalability. The core message of the infographic is that successful businesses are not built on motivation alone. They are built on structure, discipline, documentation, and repeatable systems. It concludes with a powerful reminder: a business without structure is just a hobby with pressure. Why emotion destroys businesses. Another major reason businesses fail has nothing to do with lack of money, lack of skill, or lack of opportunity. It's emotional decision-making. Many entrepreneurs don't realize this is happening because emotional decisions rarely look emotional in the moment. They look logical, necessary, urgent. But behind the scenes, the business slowly becomes controlled by fear, panic, excitement, frustration, and temporary feelings. And that creates something extremely dangerous: inconsistency. Because feelings change quickly, business does not. So what happens when every major business decision depends on emotion? The answer destroys more businesses than most people realize. To understand this properly, let's look at Business A, Business B, and Business C. Because most entrepreneurs unknowingly operate like one of them already. Business A, the excited starter. Business A sells electronics online. At first, the owner feels highly motivated. When sales increase, confidence explodes. They order more stock immediately. Spend aggressively. Start making bigger plans. But the moment sales slow down, everything changes emotionally. Marketing stops. Doubt increases. Panic decisions begin. One customer complains. Suddenly the pricing changes. One bad week? Now the owner believes the entire business is failing. And without realizing it, the business keeps changing direction based on temporary emotions. Not strategy. Not data. Not systems. Just emotional reactions. At first, this behavior feels responsive. But over time, it becomes destructive. Because businesses cannot build momentum when the strategy changes every time emotions change. And slowly, business falls into a dangerous cycle: excitement, fear, reaction, restart. Again and again. The business stays active, but never stable. Business B, the fear-driven entrepreneur. Business B runs a small bakery. Unlike Business A, this owner is not overly reactive. Instead, they are controlled by fear. Fear of losing money. Fear of competition. Fear of upsetting customers. Fear of taking risks. And at first, these decisions seem safe. Prices stay low to avoid losing buyers. Advertising is avoided to save money. Customer policies are never enforced because the owner fears complaints. Even after small profits come in, reinvestment stops completely because the owner becomes afraid of losing what they earned. But here's the problem most people never notice: fear can quietly shrink a business without killing it immediately. The business survives, but never truly grows. Opportunities get delayed. Expansion never happens. Profit margins stay weak. And over time, the business becomes trapped in survival mode. Because businesses that fear every risk eventually become too small to compete. But then there's Business C. And this business operates very differently. Business C, the disciplined decision maker. Business C runs a cleaning service. At first glance, nothing about the business looks extraordinary. But the owner understands something most entrepreneurs learn too late: emotions are temporary. Systems are stable. So instead of reacting emotionally, decisions are based on patterns, data, and long-term thinking. Weekly sales reports guide strategy. Pricing changes only when data supports it. Expansion happens after analyzing customer demand. Complaints are treated as feedback, not personal attacks. Even during stressful weeks, the business does not panic. And that emotional stability creates something powerful: predictability. While other businesses keep reacting emotionally, Business C keeps improving systematically. Consistent decisions lead to stable growth, stronger customer trust, better financial control, and long-term momentum. And over time, the business becomes far easier to manage because strategy is no longer controlled by emotions. It's controlled by structure. The core truth. Most business failures happen because people confuse feelings with facts. One bad day changes the entire strategy. Fear delays action. Excitement creates reckless decisions. Frustration causes inconsistency. And without realizing it, the business becomes emotionally unstable. But businesses cannot grow consistently inside emotional chaos. Because emotional businesses react. Disciplined businesses analyze. And that difference changes everything. Final takeaway. If your emotions are driving your business decisions, your business will always feel unstable. Because emotions are temporary. But systems create consistency. Successful businesses are not emotionless. They are emotion-controlled and system-driven. When emotions lead, strategy changes constantly, mistakes repeat, and growth becomes unpredictable. But when logic, systems, and discipline lead, decisions become clearer. Growth becomes measurable. And the business becomes strong enough to survive difficult seasons without collapsing emotionally. Because long-term business success is not built on emotional reactions. It is built on disciplined decision-making repeated consistently over time. The infographic explains how emotional decision-making quietly becomes one of the biggest reasons many businesses fail. Instead of relying on logic, systems, data, and long-term strategy, many entrepreneurs make decisions based on temporary emotions such as fear, excitement, panic, frustration, or overconfidence. The problem is that emotions constantly change, and when business strategy changes with them, instability begins to grow. To demonstrate this, the infographic compares 3 different business approaches. Business A reacts emotionally to every situation. When sales increase, the owner becomes overconfident and makes impulsive decisions. But when sales drop or customers complain, panic takes over and the entire strategy changes. As a result, the business keeps restarting emotionally instead of building long-term momentum. Business B is controlled mainly by fear. The owner fears losses, competition, customer complaints, and risk. Because of this, products are underpriced, marketing is avoided, and reinvestment slows down. The business survives, but growth remains weak and opportunities continue to disappear. Business C operates differently. Instead of reacting emotionally, the business uses discipline, data analysis, structured systems, and long-term thinking. Decisions are based on sales trends, customer feedback, and stable processes rather than temporary emotions. This creates consistency, predictability, and sustainable growth. The infographic highlights a deeper truth: many businesses fail because people confuse feelings with facts, change strategy after small setbacks, allow fear to stop action, make reckless decisions during emotional highs, and operate without emotional control systems. The core lesson is simple but powerful: a business cannot grow in a state of emotional instability. True business success is not built on emotional reactions. It is built on discipline, systems, logic, consistency, and the ability to make stable decisions even during difficult moments. This is only the beginning. You now understand 3 of the most dangerous forces that quietly destroy businesses: lack of direction, lack of structure, and emotional decision-making. But there are 2 more forces most business owners never see coming. And they are arguably more dangerous than everything covered in this video. Because by the time most people notice them, it is already too late. Part 2 drops soon. Subscribe so you don't miss it.